I'll just go ahead and get started, and when Lisa gets here, we'll welcome her as well. Welcome to the 2026 Garrett Park Candidates Forum. My name is Steve Welker. I am the president of the Garrett Park Citizens Association. To my left is Secretary Betty Fout. The CA serves as a forum for public discussion of matters of community interest, and the most important way we do that by far is hosting the annual Candidates Forum. And thank you all for coming in present and online and participating in this great Garrett Park tradition. I also want to recognize Mayor Keller, Town Manager Barb Matthews, and Assistant Town Manager Caleb Bucher, and our wonderful town staff for helping with logistics to make this hybrid meeting possible. Finally, I want to recognize our 2026 election judges, Suzanne Kurt, Joanne Schmader, and Louise Stomerinsky. I also want to we have 3 candidates for elective office. You see 2 here, and we're going to be joined by a 3rd soon. This year, citizens are being asked to fill 3 spots, 2 seats for town council and 1 seat for the mayor. For the 2 council seats, we have 2 candidates, current council members, Jerry Lee Bennett and Lisa Max, both of whom are seeking to serve an additional term. And for the office of mayor, we have current council member John Stroud. And thank you to both of you and soon Lisa Max for coming, and let's give them a round of applause, please. The Candidates Forum, as you probably well know, is an opportunity for all Garrett Park citizens to get to know their future town leaders and ask respectful but probing questions about each candidate's governing philosophy and goals for the next term. Our plan tonight is to hear a 3 to 5 minute opening statement from our candidates, after which we'll open the floor to questions for no more than an hour, and then we'll close with optional closing statements if you want. You don't have to say anything, and I will serve as the moderator. So, and Lisa is joining us right now. I saw her through the window. And does everyone gets the gist, right? We've all done this before. We can just jump in, I think. Just the general housekeeping. If you're online and you want to speak, we recommend you don't try to. We recommend you submit a written comment and Betty will read it out loud. If you really do want to speak, just keep your hand raised and we'll get to you accordingly. If you want to speak in person, we ask you to come up to the mic, state your name, state your street, and make sure you're speaking into that mic, and go ahead and ask your question. And ideally, these questions will be answerable by all 3 of the candidates, but I understand if you might have some specific questions related to being mayor versus being town council, and so certainly that will be obvious, and we'll let people field questions as is relevant. But with that, let's get to opening statements. Lisa, you want to start?
Sure, yeah, I'll be happy to. So my name's Lisa Max. I've lived in Garrett Park since 1990, and I feel very privileged to live here, and it's been a real thrill for me to have the time and energy to give back and serve on the town council. I've really enjoyed working with my colleagues and the mayor, and I'm running for my 2nd term, and I'm excited about trying to bring in the town hall renovation on time and on budget. I've done a lot of work in construction and renovation, so I feel like I have something to contribute specifically to that. And I'm happy to take your questions.
All right, thank you. Jerry Lee, you want to go?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Jerry Lee Bennett, and I am running for a 4th term, I think, for town council. I really love Garrett Park. I'm thrilled that we were able to find such a wonderful community to raise our family in, and I'm very happy to be able to share both my spare time and my skills to help Garrett Park to be well managed and to continue to move forward with progress. In terms of priorities, I really would like to continue to improve communication and transparency between the town government and our community. and our committees. I want to continue to see efforts to preserve green space and improve environmental initiatives in town. These have been things that I've worked on all along, and I want to continue to see improvements there. And then finally, we have a lot of projects, infrastructure projects, the town hall renovation, park projects that we've been either planning for a while or have begun the planning process. And it's really important to me to see that we keep moving forward, both with deliberate, careful planning, but also moving things ahead to make sure that we have reasonable budgets and we can afford the plans that we undertake. Thank you for your support. Thank you for coming out tonight, and I look forward to serving again for the next 2 years.
Thank you. John?
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, before I start, I wanted to thank Steve and Betty and the rest of the Citizens Association. They do so much great work, and some of it is behind the scenes, but very much appreciate all the work that you do. So thanks again for having this. My name is John Stroud, and I am running for the office of mayor. My family and I have been here for about 5 or 6 years, I think. We are raising our 16-year-old, and to echo what Jerry said, it has been truly a gift for us to be here, to be part of this community, and I consider it a privilege to help in any small ways that I can. I really look at the service that we do as part of that repayment for such a wonderful community. As mayor, it is really my first and primary concern to make sure I am always acting in the very best interest of the Garrett Park community as a whole. As a council member, I've learned we must always strive to reach kind of a constructive balance between a regulatory approach to managing the town and a friendlier community-based attitude. I do want to say something about our current mayor. An important goal of mine will be to carry on the thoughtfulness, the exercise discipline, and the service mindset that Mayor Keller has worked so hard to create. I have watched him work tirelessly to shape and guide a local government that listens actively to our neighbors and works diligently to get really important things done. I think from a process standpoint, it's always going to be critical to maintain our alignment with local ordinances, legislation. We have to always ensure that our basic services are carried out, kind of keeping the trains running on time, as it were, to keep every resident safe. But at the same time, we can be open to shared ideas from our neighbors. We can be helpful in our interactions and constructive and positive with those who we ultimately serve, which is every member of the Garrett Park community. We live in one of the very few intimate communities in the area, but without an intentional and collaborative strengthening of the vital relationship between our local government here and Garrett Park residents, there's a risk that it may slowly start to feel like any other large city. By working together, we can continue to make Garrett Park a model, I think, for other neighborhoods. Through active partnership and thoughtful engagement, we can progress popular ideas that we might have and foster deep and respectful community bonds and help to provide meaningful improvement to people's lives. And I just want to say that I really appreciate everyone who showed up. You can't see it at home, but there's a packed house here, and I appreciate everyone who's joined us online. Thanks, Dee.
All right. Thanks a lot, Lynette. That concludes the opening statements. And now the floor is open for any citizens who would like to come up and ask any questions of your candidates. And it's always hard going first. So if no one's champing at the bit, I'm happy to ask some questions. Oh, we do have a question. Yes, excellent. Okay, here we go. Betty, go ahead.
All right. Okay, this is a question for everybody, I think. It's from Donna on Kenilworth. Congratulations on your imminent elections, and thanks to your commitments to the town for many years. This is not the first time we've had uncontested elections. How can you, through your actions during this next term, make the perception of serving on the council or being a mayor a more attractive proposition? Good question.
Who wants to take that?
I'm happy to take a stab at it. Thank you, Donna. I'll give a personal reflection without giving a prescription for others. I spent many years living in DC, and there are many aspects of DC that I really, really love, and I miss a few. But it is anonymous to a certain extent, and I think that one of the things that I value almost as much as the beautiful scenery, the arboretum, is the fact that we are truly a community, and that community is strengthened, I feel, when we take active roles and active partnership in our local government. For me, the opportunity to serve on the council and then serve as mayor is a way for me to try to give back as much as I can to the many gifts that we have. And I think to the extent that I may give a thought for those who have considered running and perhaps didn't in the past, is that it really is an opportunity to strengthen the community with a diverse group of folks that are on the council. And as mayor, we're able to get different perspectives. But I think, the one common aspect is that we all really love where we are, or we probably wouldn't be here. There's many places to live. And I think that we do have an opportunity as individual residents and then serving on the local government to work to continue and perhaps even grow what we have here in the form of community. So that's my thought. But Donna, I appreciate your question.
Yeah, I would just encourage everyone to realize that serving on committees, talking to your town council about ideas that you have about improving the community, being willing to provide leadership in the form of running for the town council, I think it's all rewarding, and I think it's all important, because without the ability of people to donate their time and energy, the town won't continue to prosper. So I would encourage everybody to think about how you can contribute to the quality of our town and our community.
Thanks, Lisa, and thank you, John. I'll just add that I really think that the whole community has already contributed to an improvement in the general environment of the community discourse. One thing I have heard in the past that has inhibited people from running for elected office is a little bit of fear that people might get attacked on the listserv or in public forums for either actions or inactions or taking positions on particular issues in town. And honestly, I think the last few years have really shown that we as a community have grown in this regard, and we've had really healthy, robust discourse, but it's always been pretty respectful. And so that is the environment that will encourage people, I think, to run for elective office. I've seen an increase over the last couple of years of more citizens coming to town council meetings and making citizen presentations. I think one thing that we've been doing a little better job at recently, and maybe that is why people are coming forward, is we've been following up on those presentations from citizens better. And that follow through encourages that healthy, positive discourse. So I'd like to see more of that, and I would be happy to commit to making sure that we continue that follow through.
All right. So Town Hall has taken a lot of our attention for many, many years. can we get an update as to its progress, and what can people expect as to future opportunities to participate in its renovation? Is it a train that has left the station design-wise, and that we have spoken our piece, and what will be, or this is still going to be in opportunities for people to have input and say?
I think the basic design of the building, the new renovation, has been decided. The architect is finalizing plans to submit for permits with the county. Barb Matthews and our team of staff have generated some large sizable grants to make the renovation much more affordable and reachable for our town, which I'm very grateful for. So I don't think but we have not yet done the things that will really allow us to figure out what is this going to cost and how long is going to take, and that is to select a general contractor and start getting bids from subs, because I know we've spent some time and energy looking at budgets from a company that we hired to estimate the cost, but I believe, since I've done about 10 projects in the county, that until you talk to subs about value engineering and what's in and out of their bids, you really don't have a firm grip on the actual costs. So I think that's what we'll be doing. I think the plans are supposed to be done this summer, and then I hope we'll make a selection about a general contractor and then some very responsive subs to work with on the final design, budgets, estimates, bids, and hopefully construction start.
When do you think construction would start?
I don't have a date that I can offer at this time.
2027?
Yes, I would say 2027.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. The main area of design that remains, to my knowledge, is still the AV details, and I do think that there's a voluntary committee together to work on that, but there's still an opportunity to contribute to those specifications.
That's audio visual.
Audio visual. Thank you for fixing the acronym there. And many thanks to Carl Miller. He's a licensed architect who volunteered to help the mayor with our architect, our hired architect, to work through all of the design specifications and selecting finishes. So I think that work, it may not all be finished, but it's pretty close to finished as well.
Correct.
One element that can affect the timeline right now is we did only recently get notice that we're up for a federal, we have been selected for a federal earmark grant. And that will require an environmental review. And it's really important that we don't undertake any construction work until we get that approval. So it's worth taking a pause right now, getting through that approval process before we actually begin the construction.
The only thing that I would add is, first of all, I rely on the expertise of my colleagues on the council. Lisa is, our resident expert within the council on granular aspects of the construction. What I would say is that two things that are happening right now, as Jerry pointed out. We do think that it makes sense to take this additional environmental step. Staff has worked diligently to get additional funding. Every dollar that comes in from the state or the federal government is a dollar that doesn't go out from our town. And so I think that we're working very hard to get that, and the numbers that we see are encouraging. They're not quite $1 million, but it's getting pretty close. The second thing that I would say is when the architect is in, we have kind of narrowed in on ways that we can potentially reduce costs while maintaining the utility of whatever that particular investment is. We are, I think I speak for the whole council when I say that we want to have a town hall that we're super proud of. This has been this preceded certainly my time on the town council. We also understand that the money that we are spending on this is not insignificant, and so we are taking steps wherever possible to reduce costs, again, while not taking away from ultimately what we're looking to do, which is safety or infrastructure or anything else. But that is something that's forefront of our minds.
Hi, Jim Cole from Rokeby Avenue. Beyond the town hall, I'm wondering what each of you thinks are the priorities for capital spending.
I think we are planning to regrade and reseed or turf the ball field next to the pool. I think there's a lot of work on the committee that is working on a redesign and redevelopment of what we call the dog park now. And those would be the two biggest things that I could think of after the town hall.
I would agree that our planning for the park improvements is really a top priority right now. In addition, it's not as sexy, but we do have a pretty good schedule of capital improvements for our roads, curbs, and gutters that we really need to make sure we're setting aside funding for the next few years and cycles. And we did set aside a good amount for 2027 to get that started.
And Yendel Park is another project that's about to start, and hopefully it'll be completed by this winter.
One of the great things and one of the dangers of going third is that they said everything that I was going to say. I was even going to say the roads. I can't believe
You should get to go first next time.
Okay, as long as it's an easy question.
So thinking about like the Parks Advisory Committee, and then maybe going back to Town Hall and thinking about like the specifics, like finishes and colors and things like that. What are your views on the benefits of committee work versus the work of the council members and mayor in getting these things across the finish line?
So I think that the collaboration between the town council and the committees is really important. We, right now, some of the more granular decisions that are being made at the committee level. And we are being asked on the council to approve those. So we are not, we are not involved with every detail. So I think, Jerry Lee mentioned Carl Miller, who's, here in our town and an architect, and we are able to leverage his expertise. But I think that making sure that there's a complement between having, we just had a council meeting, I think it was in December or January, where the architect came to us and says, said, I have 20 things that I need your help on. And we were all asked to kind of weigh in on that. Once we weighed in on that, then a lot of the decision making went back to the architecture firm, to the committees. But I do think that ultimately the council is going to want to be involved in any decisions that are going to move the needle significantly from a financial standpoint. But we've got some wonderful volunteers on our committees, and being able to utilize their expertise, I think, is equally important.
I'll go next. I am so grateful that we have volunteers for the various committees in town, and there are different types of committees and different roles. So, for example, as John said, for the town hall work at this stage, the committee is really implementing and making fine, detailed decisions based on the bigger decisions that the council already made. We have a number of committees, like the Parks Committee, that are working on getting input from residents, shaping those into recommendations, and providing an advisory role to come to the council with recommendations and advice. The council will still need to make some of the big rock decisions about budget and whether to take those recommendations or ask for reshaping of recommendations. So at different phases, we need those committees to do some of that legwork and to help translate and bring feedback from residents in a meaningful, shaped way that we can act on.
Yeah, I'll just say that being on the town council for a couple of years, I think the best decisions that we've made are the bubble up ones from the community to the town council to voting on the budget and the staff. And I think the more we can get participation and communication from the ground up to us, the better the decisions will be made on behalf of all of our residents.
Hi, I'm Randy Auerbach from Montrose Avenue. A preliminary question first. Assuming everyone gets elected, there'll be a vacancy on the council then? And how does that work?
It's a great question. I don't know
was
if we
my
have
question.
precedent for it, but I'll tell you the process.
Okay.
When an existing council member vacates that role to go to mayor, the current code states that the council will vote on an appropriate person. Again, I don't know. There's probably folks that have lived in town longer than I that may know a little bit more specifically, but that's kind of the letter of the code.
And they would serve for a 2-year term,
The remainder of the
the
term.
remainder of the term being vacated.
Of mine, which is a year.
Okay.
So they would serve for a year and then would be up for re-election next year.
Okay. So my question is, can any of the three of you think of any particular vote in which you were either the sole dissent or in the minority? Perhaps explain why, and also whether that issue, in light of the realignment of voting power, might come up, or change of circumstances, if that issue might come up again in the near or medium future.
That's a great question. I will say that the overwhelming majority of votes that come up are unanimous, and I think that speaks to Mayor Keller's management of the process. I believe that a dissenting vote is a way to creatively look at discrepancies, and I'll just bring up one in particular. We are having work started at Yendell Park over the next week or two. We put out bids for the park, and we got one bid back, and it was a good bid. It was a great bid with a super reputable group. I dissented against that along with one other council member, only because I felt that it would behoove us and it would give us leverage to have multiple bids. At the end of the day, again, I think it's a great counterparty for us to have. I think the work that they're going to do is going to be exceptional at a fair price. I just felt at the time that it was worth taking another month and perhaps soliciting other bids. But other than that, I can't think of any time where there weren't unanimous votes.
Right. I agree. In recent years, we've had a lot of unanimous votes, but there's often a lot of work behind that, right? A lot of discussion and a lot of realigning, adjusting of either the resolutions or ordinances before we take the actual vote to get everybody to a point of agreement. I do think it's possible that there could be a fair amount of controversy about some of the parks planning decisions that are upcoming, because I hear in the community there's still a lot of viewpoints of residents about what the park plan should look like, particularly for the Cambria Dog Park area. So that's potentially a controversial issue, but again, I hope that a good process of communication will get us to a point where it'll be a congenial and not overly lengthy decision-making process.
I can think of one that flared up maybe a few years ago. It was the cessation of the contract with our longstanding waste management company and moving on to a new one. I think, do you have any thoughts of that experience and what you wish happened differently or lessons learned? Maybe Jared Lee. Or Lisa.
Communication.
Yeah. And I think also, the harsh numbers were pretty clear that a change was in order. And I think the new firm that's doing the work has done a good job from what I've experienced. So, but that was, contentious in that the people who've been doing that work were relying on that income. And, it's difficult financial decisions when you're trying to make good financial decisions on behalf of the town.
Hi, I'm Tony Altar, and we did have a lot of discussion about the renovations of this building. Obviously, that's a big issue because it is a very expensive project. And just to put this in a little context, and then I'll ask you my specific question about your level of support. I know you have all done a lot of work in thinking about this, but to put it into context, it's a $2.5 million project. We all know these projects often balloon higher. Maybe it ends up being a $3 million project when all is said and done. And when I think about that, I think that could purchase two of the nicest homes in Garrett Park, just that amount of money. And you would still have this building, and we would have two other properties. And how did we get to the point where we spend that kind of money on renovating a structure which might look a bit nicer, a bit different, but probably could have been fixed up with a far smaller amount of money? So just to put all this in context, I'm kind of shocked at the kind of expenses that are being put into this project, which has been neglected for many years. All anybody has to do is just go outside and take a look at the siding along the side of this building. It's been sitting like that for 20 years. And I addressed this group, let's get a crew out here and just start working on it like we would work on any of our own homes in a much more cost-effective manner. So my question to you is, and John, you even suggested there may be some ways of adjusting the expenditures, lowering the cost. So my question to you is, do you still support this kind of expenditure? And if you have the opportunity, would you consider scrapping the program the way it is now and using a far smaller amount of money to renovate this place to a nice standard? Another question I have is, how much has been spent today already without a single improvement having been made? Is it $200,000, $300,000?
On the design.
How much?
On the design, you're saying.
On everything that's been done till now. And my guess is that alone would have taken care of this whole building. So I think this is an important issue because it addresses what I consider a fundamental issue amongst the council and the dynamics of decision making, which I think in this case have taken way too long to implement any improvement in the structure, and now we're manifesting a grossly exaggerated budget. So
did you got a question, right?
Yeah.
To support the project.
Sure, and I can give a perspective coming into the process, and I know Tony and I have had discussions about this. I think that to your question, Tony, on design, I don't have the exact figure, but it's not that that's a sunk cost, but these are expenses that need to be spent prior to the actual construction being done. I will say that over the last year, I've had a chance to both speak with our architect as well as look into fairly granular aspects of the plans. And I think that one of the central delineations between this structure and a very nice house in Garrett Park is that the historic aspects of it necessitate a certain number of steps, which I was unfamiliar with, frankly, until I began having these discussions with the architect. So I think that one of the things that we're trying to balance at this point, and I think Lisa mentioned this, is that we are dealing with numbers right now that have markups that probably will not come to fruition.
Right.
They are saying, you know, we're going to have this markup, which they ultimately they have said we will come down from, but what we don't want to do is go higher. So the numbers that, Tony, that you have pointed out, while real, are estimations based on markups of both time and equipment that I suspect we will begin to come back towards a more central mean.
It's also important to recognize that a house is built under a residential code of construction, and this property is a commercial code of construction, and the costs are significantly more, since I just did a commercial code property, and it cost about $1 million more than the same house built on a residential spec. And I also think that, you know, there's a lot of things about this property that need to be addressed. You know, all these windows are beautiful, but they're all leaking, and they all need to be retrofitted, and they need to be insulated. The back extension was built with a flat roof, and it's old and needs to be redone. And I think there's been a lot of effort and time and attention spent on what are the things that this property needs and deserves to make sure that it will have a useful life. And it has, you know, needed a lot of work for sure.
Let me just, I appreciate the answer.
Address
You
it
know,
to-
let Tony go ahead, and
Oh, okay,
I'll
sure.
make
Yeah,
my
I
comments
just wanted
after.
to rephrase my question, because you guys are running for office, even though you're unimposed. I think people in the audience would like to hear a clear yes or no answer on certain questions. On this question, I would like to get a yes or no answer. Do you support moving ahead with this large budget to do the project the way it is? And if the answer is no, I'd be very happy to hear about any alternative solutions. So just a yes or no from each of you. I would really appreciate hearing that.
I would say yes.
Do you want to finish with a yes or no?
Yeah, I would say as it stands currently, we don't know exactly what it is, because again, these numbers could very well come down. Do I think that the town hall needs to be? Do we need to address it structurally? The answer is yes. In the current plan that we have, I understand what you're asking, Tony. I think it's a little bit. Part of it is inchoate, right? Part of it is incoming. You know, we are still creating what it is. I am in favor with Lisa on taking the necessary steps to create a structure ultimately that both follows the codes, historic preservation and otherwise. And again, the challenges that Lisa mentioned are, a lot of it is a learning process for me. You know, going through, it's not the same. It's much more circuitous and much more expensive. But I do feel that at the end of this, and I know it's been more protracted than anyone would want, I do think we're going to have a town hall that people are going to be proud of, and it's going to be functional.
I still support the scope of the project, and I support the budget that we've set aside for it. I'm glad that we've been able to bring in some additional grant funding to reduce the amount of funding that the town is having to invest into the property. I think that if the town had been able to more quickly put the project together back when this first was floated and the original charrettes were done long before I was on the council, at that time the economy was such that a more affordable budget might have been possible. But I think the factor of the current cost of construction, along with the fact that we are doing commercial code level work, we also as a community, with a lot of input from a lot of residents, made a choice to restore the historic facade of the building, and that costs money. We also, with any renovation, we are obligated by law to update the bathrooms to the Americans with Disabilities Act compliance, and that also has a significant cost with commercial finish requirements there. So we've made some choices. They all bring a price tag with them. one of the things that I found really interesting that we learned very recently through discussions with the architect, some of the deterioration of the siding that you mentioned, Tony, apparently has been exacerbated due to maintenance, not necessarily just lack of maintenance, but actually damaging maintenance that's been done to the building over the years. Sealing up of the German siding has caused rotting on the inside of the walls because of the lack of breathing that the normal, if the siding had been left open under the cracks between the siding boards had been left as originally designed and built, that rotting would not have occurred. So that one of the reasons for the deterioration of the siding and of the paint on the siding is our own ignorance in our maintenance work in the past. So while sometimes having volunteer efforts or quick maintenance might seem like a good way to economize in the short term, sometimes it can have devastating long-term costs.
Thank you. Does anyone else have? Kip?
Hi, Jim Cole, still on Rugby Avenue. I wanted to raise an issue that I think John alluded to in his opening statement. Read that the town is considering or going to prohibit circular driveways and require concrete aprons on driveways. And I'm wondering how you each feel about whether we're heading into sort of micromanagement, overreach, heading toward a HOA territory, if you're concerned about that or not.
Well, I just built a house on Montrose, and it does have concrete aprons. And I know that the reason I'm positive about concrete aprons is that the asphalt curbs get destroyed when snow removal equipment hits them. And the concrete is a lot more stable and sturdy in that environment. You know, I voted to have a smaller amount of concrete required on the aprons because I didn't think it had to go all the way through the right of way and all the way to the sidewalk of the house or whatever. I just thought, 10 feet or so would be sufficient. And I think aesthetically also it's a more appealing look for the town. I don't really feel strongly about the circular driveways, but I think that having concrete aprons will improve the durability of the streetscape in our town.
Right, my question is not about the specifics of the concrete aprons or the driveways, but about whether you feel like the town should really be involved in telling residents they have to have those things. Are we heading toward micromanaging from the town government and or the town staff?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think it's one that we spend a lot of time on in the council. The idea here is that do we really want to impose things that make it seem like kind of an HOA? I think the reason Lisa brought up the concrete aspect is that these are public right-of-ways, right? And so
Right.
This is different than kind of saying, this is what you need to do on your driveway. You can do obviously, we're trying to strike a balance. I think one of the things that we've seen is to bring up this concrete in the public right of way is that some folks have said, can we put gravel down, which is great. It's more porous, I think. But the snowplows come in and they tear it up. And so there is a balance to be struck, but Jim, I do want to acknowledge the fact that this is something that we spend a lot of time on. Is this our role? Is it really our role to impose this structure? And I can tell you that when those discussions happen, it's almost the tail that wags the dog. We're not saying, hey, we want to control. At least this has been my experience over the last year in the town council. We don't want to control. We want to be able to minimize costs because the town is paying for that right away. So if a snowplow is destroying that 2 or 3 times in a winter, that's what we're trying to avoid. It's not really a point of control as much as we are trying to minimize certainly we want to have an eye on expense, but also the inconvenience for the folks who are having the end of their driveways torn up. But I can assure you that that is something that I think that we acknowledge and we are aware of, that we don't want to be in the business of kind of saying this is the uniformity that we want, kind of the Stepford wives. We try to keep that into balance with economic concerns
And safety
others.
and right
safety,
away and, visibility and curb cuts and kids and all of that goes into making these decisions for us.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a case where I'm glad that we didn't rush to complete and pass an ordinance quickly, because each iteration that we've looked at has given us an opportunity to get it out there for the public to hear about it, get some more input, give it some more thought from our own perspectives of what the practicalities are. I do think we need to update and complete this ordinance revision. But I'm glad we're not rushing it, because we need this kind of input from residents. The current ordinance has some out-of-date standards. It also has some out-of-date financial aspects that I really do think we need to fix. I've been a proponent of making sure that we do allow for some variance of types of driveways, and also I would like to find some ways for us to encourage more permeable materials to be used in driveways.
And we'll say this is the last question.
My name is Charlie Snyder. I'm on Montrose Avenue. I was just wondering whatever happened to the Yendel property, which seems to be dead now. And that's Yendel Park.
Yeah.
And the spring at the bottom of the sledding hill that the Pratts donated to the council.
Well, I know the Yendel property is breaking ground and starting in the next couple of weeks on the construction. I don't know about the spring at the bottom of the Pratt's property, so maybe somebody else can weigh in on that.
Yeah, I would just reiterate, Charlie. So the former Yendel property has now been raised, and we are putting in a very simplistic but open space park in that area, the former Yendel property. On the spring, I have to say that I just became aware of the spring, so I certainly am not. I can't comment on plans for it. I have not heard of any discussions about changing it in any way, shape, or form from its, the way it exists today. Mm-hmm. Maybe you have, but I don't think we have any plans at the moment.
Right. So, in fact, I think the town sent some notices to the neighbors immediately near Yandel property that they will be doing some work starting this week, actually. For the Grotto property, the town did apply for and get some county and or state park funds, I think, to help with that property. We did do some initial removal of invasive trees in that area, but I do think there is some additional work planned. I'm just not sure of what the time frame for that is. But there's not an intent to do a lot of work there, because it is meant to be kept in a somewhat natural state to just re-highlight the grotto itself and make it more visible to residents.
You do.
Okay, so that concludes the open question.
So for those of us who have questions.
Can you go to the mic, please? No, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My name is Courtney Culp, and I'm on Montrose Avenue. I'm also on the Garrett Park Conservation Trust Committee. So this is a general question. It's for the future. It's not really a concern right now, but it is a concern to me, in that there's so much encroachment around us, okay? We've got EYA, who just built this, the townhouses and stuff. And I'm concerned about the property, the Lerner property, I don't know what's going on there. And then also the data centers concern, I don't know what's going on in that area too, around us. So that's just a general concern.
So those all sound like good, discrete topics for a citizens association led meeting with members of council to attend to specifically address that topic. And we're always interested in coming up with those and thinking about, I mean, certainly the boundary study for the new high school occupied a lot of our time last year, but we're always happy to take and run with those ideas. So those are great ideas to talk about. The learner thing, I think there's no plans for that thing to be developed anytime soon. I think it's been tied up. And it's not even counted in like the numbers for purposes of are you correcting me?
I wrote them a letter a couple times and suggested maybe doing a temporary park until they decide what they want to do with the property. Of course, I didn't hear back, but it was a try.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Well, the last time that flared up was trying to get access to that shopping center, right?
Right.
That they kept getting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that offer, Steve. I think that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So if do you want to do some closing statements? Just I mean, these will be your elected officials, so take your victory lap now. If you
Well, I
want.
would encourage anyone who wants to come and talk to me. I'm home a lot, and I'd be happy to sit and talk to anybody about any of their ideas. I've been able to get with the Weymouth resident there. They wanted a speed bump put in, and I was able to get that approved through the county, through the council, and get that installed. I know that there's been other specifics that residents have come and told me about. So please come and talk to us and all of the town council whenever you see us, or give us a call, send us a text. We'd be happy to sit down and talk to you. And thank you all for showing up, because I think the one thing that I keep realizing is how much people care about our town and how important it is for all of us. So having you here is an example of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for being here. Thank you for speaking up. And going back to the very first question, I think it was the first question of the evening, we're going to have a vacancy on the town council in the very near future. So please give some consideration to
Raise your hand.
That's right. Volunteering and raising your hand to serve. There will be information coming out soon about how we would fill that vacancy. And it is a pleasure to serve in Garrett Park because it's such a wonderful community. And I'm looking forward to more time in this role. And I'm looking forward to another colleague who's as of yet unknown, but out there somewhere wanting to serve.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So I just wanted to thank Betty and Steve and the rest of the Citizens Association for all the great work that your team does. I want to thank, I think Kayla is here, and Barb Matthews and the staff. Without, as I mentioned in the opening, without that collaboration, things tend to not move as smoothly. I just wanted to spend 30 seconds on tone, because I think that Mayor Keller's shoes are big shoes to fill, not just in the way that he technically managed the process, but just the type of person that he is. Over the next 2 years, I will ultimately make many decisions affecting the lives of our residents. I would not ask and do not expect that you will agree with every decision. But I do ask that you consider my commitment to making each of these decisions with transparency and with fairness. My commitment to making each of these choices only after undertaking a deliberate process and carefully weighing the impact that it has on our entire community. As mayor, I will work every day to show that we truly live, not just in a neighborhood of beautiful houses, but in a thriving community built on the foundations of accountability, of collaboration, and of mutual respect. So thank you, everyone who's come this evening. We really appreciate it. I would encourage you also, if you like, to come to the town council meetings. We have a section that we dedicate to input from the residents. It's a really good opportunity both to hear from you and also to hear updates, as Tony brought up, on Town Hall and many others affecting all of us in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So one last time, could everyone please give a round of applause to our candidates? This concludes the candidates forum. We hope you vote on May 4th, Monday, May 4th. Please vote. Thank you.